Ray, where today we're jumping into John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. This is the Peacock version of John Wayne Gacy. The last episode I watched the Netflix version, I went back to normal, right? I watched the Netflix version, and the second episode of the Netflix version of the tapes, I really did enjoy. The first two episodes of this, I would like somebody to let me know what the discrepancies are between this and Netflix, which one is true, which one is false. There's some things that are just different than what is being said from each other, and I'm very curious to know why. This came out in 2001. I don't remember which one, what year the Netflix version came out. Maybe the Netflix version had the more up-to-date current information compared to this one. I really don't know. I'm very confused. But regardless, we're going to be watching episode 3 and 4, and then we'll go back onto the Netflix version, whatever it's called, the tapes, and then we'll finish this off with 5 and 6. So definitely also I'm watching Sally Killer, or Killer Sally. That's a new show that came out on Netflix. So we're going to be jumping into a bunch of true crime stuff. I also do know that we're going to be watching Ted Bundy. I also know about the Razor Ramon, I forgot to say Razor Ramon, and that's a wrestler. Rest in peace, he was one of my favorite wrestlers. But there's a bunch of murderers and killers that y'all know that you told me about that I agree and we're going to watch. We also jumped into Mindhunter in case you guys have not noticed, so please check out those reactions as well. There's a lot of things going on in this channel. I hope you guys are enjoying. So I'm ready to jump into this. As always, this is going to be a full reaction from my second and third tier here on the YouTube platform, as well as my other platform, Patreon. So guys, please sign up to one of those platforms and help support the channel today. With that being said, let's jump into John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise, and find out exactly what this content has got to give. Oh shit, I just knocked over my Hannibal Lecter. Talking about killers.
When the search warrants were effected in your case, they did find an awful lot.
Well, yeah, I had offered to sell them the house because I thought there was nothing down in the crawl space.
How many bodies were actually located on the property, and where?
29 bodies, or 28 bodies were found on the property. 27 of them under the house.
What was the date of that arrest, do you recall?
December 22nd, 1978 is when I was arrested.
Is he trying to say that the house was like this before?
I was driving home from college. Just kept hearing about all this on the news. I never ever thought of my brother.
36-year-old convicted sex offender, and this miserable search will go on.
My mom says, I have something to tell you, and then I knew. I mean, that's all she had to say. We moved in 1973 to Des Plaines, had all brothers. My brother John was 3 years older than me, was 19 years old, didn't show up for work on Friday, and it was payday. It went over to his apartment and had to call the police in order to let them in. His place was not ransacked or anything, and it was like, oh, well, he's not here. When my brother disappeared, his car disappeared. He's convinced my mom that, oh, he just went away for the weekend.
Police.
As time went on, you pray that he's still alive and he's happy somewhere. Brother's 1971 Plymouth Satellite was seen stealing gas. It gave you hope again. My mom knew enough about the Chicago police and how they worked, but it was just a kid that disappeared. The attitude of the police.
Friends and relatives of missing teenage boys have been calling from all over the country to learn more about this bizarre crime.
At that point, the only name we knew was Rob Piest. That this was just the latest of many, many victims. It came out that night that there was one body buried in the basement. The number grew and grew and grew.
Actually smiling in his mugshot. Strange to me.
Gacy says, I'm going to give it all up. I'm ready to give you a detailed confession.
And I got into more of a monologue by Gacy. It wasn't a interrogation so much.
It was that he had buried 27 young men in his crawl space. He did bury a couple of the kids in his backyard. He threw the remaining in the Des Plaines River. Just a tough thing to listen to. The way he talked about how he killed everybody. He was just getting ready to leave the pharmacy when Rob Piest came out to his car. He says, yeah, actually, why don't you hop in and fill out a quick application and I'll give you a call. His mom is out front waiting for him. And
his
Gacy
mom
fumbles
was
around
there.
with the paperwork. He says, I just live down the block here. If you want, come on with me. And Piest says, well, my mom's out front, back right away, don't worry. So Gacy drives from Nissan Pharmacy with Rob Piest willingly. He starts talking to him about entertaining kids as a clown. A pair of handcuffs on himself, Gacy does, and struggles with the handcuffs a little bit. Got the handcuffs dangling.
Wow.
Piest struggles and struggles and struggles, and he says, I don't know how to get out of things. He says, what's the trick? I reached in my pocket and I pulled out the key and I said, the trick is you got to have the key. He was pretty much mine at that point.
I did a great graphic detail of the handcuff trick, disrobing him, performing oral sex on him, put a rope around their neck, tie a little knot right at the neck, and then a little bit later he would put another knot, wedge the stick between the front shoulder and the back of the head. And he would start twisting, get tight, and eventually strangle him.
If you're gonna kill somebody, you just put it on their neck and twist it 3 times or 4 times or whatever until the person stopped moving.
And he went to answer the phone, and when he came back, Rob Piest was dead, fallen onto the ground. When his mother came, couldn't find him, and I think Rob was already dead by that time. He was already dead.
And his attorney, Sam Amirani, was waiting in the lobby. Agreed to have Gacy do a second confession with the state's attorneys there. 15 people crammed into a little interview room and just watching everyone else with their jaws open. We're his last audience. He's lost everyone else. So he's going to try to impress us with his horrific acts.
Nightmare. Sam Amirante is a criminal attorney, and he told me that John had been arrested for suspicion of murder. I said, John, did you kill somebody? And he uttered, He didn't say yes. He didn't learn until everybody else did about the numerous amounts of bodies that were under the house.
He has confessed to the Piest murder. Meanwhile, investigators have started to dismantle Gacy's house and garage as they continue to search for other bodies.
Reporters every step of the way, cameras all over the street, people who were glued to their screens watching our coverage.
Here's what it looked like last night when we were here. A couple hours tonight.
State's Attorney's Office advises not to say anything.
State's Attorney's Office advised you not to say anything. You've been here for a couple hours.
100 people there just watching the house. You just go on, and you keep digging, keep going.
Literally using the attempt fingers and trying to exhume the body because there's always the possibility of loss of trace evidence.
The crawl space, and more recently has been a mass grave under John Gacy's home.
Every day we'd probably come up with a couple, 2, 3 bodies, videotape it.
Starting on the north wall at the front door, upper level.
This was body such and such, dug up by such and such. And then he'd be putting a body bag taken out, bringing the body bags out. The cameras would roll at that point, and you could hear people say, okay, today, 3 more. That's, they were counting them.
People were out there in the snow chanting like at a football game the number of body bags being carried into a squad roll.
It had turned into a circus, an amazing spectacle to this reporter. People bringing brown bag lunches. When the people got tired of looking at the house, they could take pictures of each other. See, I was there, where they found the body.
Recovering bodies, we don't find Rob Piest there.
Since Robert Piest only been gone for 10 days, this can't be him because these are bones already.
He certainly never handled anybody else like John Gacy or that magnitude of a case. Told Gacy was in an Iowa prison when his father died. That upset him a lot. Remember when your father died? And, well, we've got a family now in Des Plaines that would like to be able to spend Christmas having closure. Is he above ground? Where's he at? He says, well, it's neither.
How was he then taken from the car and placed into the river?
Just opened up the trunk and dumped him in.
Okay.
There was no big special deal on it.
There's no room left in the crawl space, so he drove to the river.
And the current got pretty fast. It just kept moving and moving.
6-year-old John Gacy, a convicted sex offender, has already been charged with the murder of 15-year-old Robert Piest.
For some reason, took a liking to me. I had the blonde hair at the time. Certainly
That's probably why.
We had a good relationship.
He called the crawl space the burial grounds.
Give me a piece of paper, and the only thing we had was a pink copy of his prisoner property. A diagram, rectangular, shape of the house was rectangle and with an X on it. He said that's where the first one was buried.
These numbers denoted how many people were buried in a particular grave or trench.
As soon as he got done with it, I reached in and grabbed it from him because I wanted to have that as evidence. Collection of where those bodies were and where they actually did find the bodies was right on the money.
The murder suspect has allegedly told police they will find the remains of 20 more young men and boys here.
There were 29 bodies that were at the house. One under the barbecue pit and one under the walkway to the garage.
I can't tell you how I acted when I saw that they were under that house. I stood there like frozen. Really got to get somebody or do something. There must be something dead under the house. There isn't anything dead under the house. Yes, there is. I was right. There were dead things under that house. The youngest girl had her bedroom right there where that crawl space was.
Couldn't get down in the crawl space that easy, and then I had to bum back to begin with. You got to crawl on your belly to move around in the crawl space.
Gacy asked us about whether two kids that worked for him, Mike Rossi and David Cram, were at the station. Did they know what the trenches were for? And his answer was, they never said anything, but if they didn't know what was down there, they were stupid.
Spread the line to get rid of any of the smell. That's really why they claim that they were digging was, shall I say, attractive to them. That's kind of why they stuck with it.
And they were getting property from young kids who never appeared again.
Saw Officer Rafael Tovar taking Rossi in and out of the house, from Gacy, confidant, friend, lover, to informant by police.
Went to Mike Rossi's house because we wanted to interview him some more. I asked her what kind of cars he drives. So I'll look out the window. And she told us there's a white Plymouth. And Zig's car was a white Plymouth Satellite. There was one of those lights in the cartoons that go on to Mike Rossi. We found out that he'd gotten the car from John Gacy. So we were able to tie John Zig to Gacy. Working kid, and somehow or other wound up on the bad side of Gacy.
He come back to the family and said, we have evidence that he's alive and just simply gone.
Mike Rossi apparently went up to get gas one day and did the fill and run, took off without paying. Channeled over to the investigator that was doing the John Zig missing persons report.
He assured them, oh, no, Zig needed money. I had the car because he sold it to me.
Police believed Gacy's story. In fact, John Gacy himself was the one who determined that John Zig was a runaway.
Was unable to locate your son, but I did learn that he sold his auto in February of 1977 and told the buyer that he needed the money to leave town.
Crazy. Back then, they didn't do much of
I used to have
investigation.
dreams that I would see him, would run the opposite way or would just ignore me. For whatever reason, he didn't want to be a part of the family. I didn't see my brother's car again until on the news when they were at Gacy's house.
Noticed they mentioned a ring. I mean, with the initials that were in it, I already knew that it was his.
Things that definitely put him there. It was just a matter of time.
John, Jim, and Patty.
When the police officer positively identified, it sort of, changes everything in your life.
Knowing it had nothing to do with us. He got in with the wrong guy at the wrong time, and this is what happened.
The one common thread that runs through all the interviews with the families of the victims is, we tried to tell the police. Continue my research. I'm getting angrier and angrier as to why somebody didn't stop this madman.
His name came up in some missing person reports in Chicago.
Gregory Grodzick, let's see, number 4. He came to us through Taft High School through a program. He had worked for Republic Lumber Company, and then he came to work for us.
He was a senior at Taft High School. We had a very simple family. We had dinner together every night. Senior year, you had an option to have a part-time job. Coming home, and he said there was a man that came in, his name was Gacy, and he wants to give me a job. He's dangling $5 an hour cash versus $2.25. A kid at 17 is going to say, well, I'm going to go this route. He was supposed to go to Gacy's house to pick up a paycheck. He'd come home, he'd give my mother a kiss. And that night, when he did not come home, my mother knew there was something wrong. Mom talked to a couple of police officers, and they all said, well, there's really nothing we can do. He has to be gone at least 72 hours. One day, they found the car in a parking lot. That was his pride and joy, his car.
I talked to him. I called him up to find out if my Gregory called. And he said he did. And that he was going to come to work. He says no. And I says, how do you know it was Gregory? And he says, because he had him on his tape.
He says, can I have that time card? And my mother said, no, I'm going to hold on to this. She felt that he probably could have gave more information, but was too elusive.
Did you ever tell the police about your conversation with John Gacy?
Yes, I'm sure I did.
And that was the last she heard from Gacy, and she got nowhere with police either.
Father, his mode was stay at home, say the rosary, and my mother kept saying, oh, the hell with that. I'm going to go do the footwork. My girlfriend, and she said, oh, my dad is always saying, you know, it's tops on his list. Gacy, that's the man that your brother worked for. This could be it. Girlfriend's dad, he said, there's a case breaking. It's bigger than you can ever imagine.
Gregory was 17 years old when he disappeared one night 2 years ago. Nevertheless, Gregory's mother still hopes he's alive.
I really don't want to believe that.
Gregory said that he was working around Gacy's house, digging trenches around his home. They were digging their own graves. There would have been a victim, but there would have been so many more young men saved. I feel sorry for those other families. They had to go through the same thing.
Were reassured by police that they were working on it. The victims were voiceless and faceless and cloutless, approached by this roly-poly man who would promise them money and give them something else.
Never once showed any type of remorse or regretting what he did. He always blamed the kids.
The monster image that's been portrayed of me. They want to make them look like innocent babes in the woods, and I was swatting them like flies.
16, 17, 18 years old, and some guy pulls up next to him with a squad car, it looks like. They're going to do what this guy tells them.
You did anything, or you want drugs or something like that? That's how it happened. Always happened chance encounter.
Talked to some young men who'd escaped, barely.
Time Robert Piest went missing. Gacy was actually out on bond on a charge of battery. He came forth. We got the information from Rignall himself.
Jeff and I were together for 27 years. All the problems started when he got abducted by John Wayne Gacy. I got a phone call. Jeff told me that he was abducted and almost killed. Lit the joint up and passed it to him.
It's a clean-cut looking man. Got in the car with him, and shortly after I got in the car with him, he placed a rag over my face.
Wake up every now and then. He would see something, but he would only be there for a split second. Chains, he said, that were suspended from the ceiling that held him up in the air. He was there being beaten, being raped, being chloroformed. Doctor drove him back down to the area that he was picked up at and left him there. He was distraught. He was beat up. He had burns from chloroform. Everything that could go wrong with your body seemed to go wrong with him at this moment.
And he did not know where the house was or what it looked like or anything.
The police assumed that Jeff's encounter with Gacy was a consensual arrangement. They would figure that all sexual arrangements between gay people were consensual, which is definitely not the case.
Pretty much figured out one gay guy and another one. They didn't really care because they didn't do very much of an investigation.
Jeff thought that man could kill somebody, why he wanted to catch him. As Jeff got out of the hospital, we started looking for the car that picked Jeff up. Knew he was out somewhere in the vicinity of the airport.
Rented a car and sat where I thought I was, approximately, waiting for his car to come by.
Jeff looked up and he said, "That's it! That's the car!" pulled in right in behind him, kept a couple car lengths away from him.
The license plate number, identified the name, and went back to the police.
Called Jeff and told him that he was arrested. And he said, good, where is he? Is he in jail? He was released right away after posting a minor bond to get the charges on Gacy bumped up. State's attorney said, well, you can't bump him up. After all, it's just another butt fuck.
When they finish here, police plan to search other sites and Draga River, where Gacy allegedly told them he disposed of other bodies.
I mean, he was manic, crazy, yelling, screaming. Why didn't they believe me? He was totally upset. I thought he was going to just have a total nervous breakdown and be done. The next news had more bodies coming out.
There were all kinds of victims, and there was a good percentage that were absolutely straight suburban kids.
Gacy told us that most of his victims, as long as they didn't pose a threat to him, the vast majority of these people left unharmed. Who he perceived to be a threat, he would deal with them usually with the rope trick.
The fact that it appeared that many of the victims were gay young men, I think created a stigma, and I think this might have been part of the reason why Gacy was able to get
Look at him dragging the hair.
It's a very difficult thing to report because I didn't know what the parents and family members of these young men knew.
They came to him either paid or looking for a good time and got more than they bargained for.
Robert Piest was a healthy, athletic young man who never left home.
The police went by what they were being told by Gacy. They didn't know who these people even were. The reporters are doing the same thing. The police told the reporters nobody cares about them. Chicago police, who on many occasions could have prevented the futures from happening, did nothing.
Gacy came into contact with authorities more than half a dozen times, allegedly involved in crimes ranging from kidnapping to rape and assault.
I remember talking to the police superintendent at the time, James O'Grady. What's going on here? Why didn't you see these signs? He was angry. He thought that the detectives did not do their work. Furious with the work of the detectives who released Gacy time after time after time.
In your neighborhood, who you think is a good person, they might just be another John Wayne Gacy.
John lived to deceive. And after his arrest, a whole new chapter of Gacy's deception began.
He was already thinking what his defense was going to be. I'm never going to spend a day in jail for this.
He spent the rest of his life in jail. Well, very enlightening, this episode. It just seems like the police department back in the day just did not want to do their job. I don't know exactly what they got paid to do back in the day, but they didn't do their jobs. It's just very interesting. Back in the 70s, 80s, apparently, it was very corrupt. I don't know if it's more corrupt than it is now. But it was pretty corrupt. It just seems to be, okay, we learned about Dahmer over there, but we dealt with minorities and the poor, and the police didn't want to deal with them. And gays over here dealt with gays, but also predominantly with just white men, white young men, and they didn't seem to be interested in that either. They weren't interested in the families, they just were not interested. It's just very interesting. I mean, I probably would have been dead. If I was back then, I probably would have been D-E-A-D, capital letters. And I bet you money, who knows what would happen. Thankfully, I was not born then. I was born in the late 80s. Heidi Ho Winslow. But yeah, this was just crazy. Absolutely insane. These people were begging and pleading. Then that guy was telling the cops then he brings he did all the work for the police, and the police to let him go. It's just, wow. And I wonder if the families sue the police department, because I would see that they would win. I would think they would have won their cases if they did sue the police department, because the police department failed to protect and serve is what they're hired to do, and they did not do so. And I believe 33 bodies, not 29, I believe, were found, right? 33 people died allegedly, or was it 29, 28? I say allegedly because I don't know the exact number, so I'm going off of 33 because for some reason I thought 33 was what was told to me earlier, but who knows. So it's very sad, and we're going to be getting into another episode ASAP of this documentary. So with that being said, if you've seen this reaction and realize you are not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Also please like and share this content because it does wonders for for this channel. And I'll see you all next time on Andres L.